She had no name that could be spoken in any human tongue. Her people used resonance instead of sound, memory instead of words, and emotion instead of thought. But now, she remembered nothing. She didn't remember the stars she was born under, or the silken blue skies of her homeworld, or the soft humming lullabies her mother once echoed into her dreams. She only remembered the cold. It was deep and endless and cruel, a silence that went on for centuries, freezing her thoughts like crystal, slowing time until it was just a suggestion. Her body, small and strange to human eyes like a sculpture carved from glass and light, remained locked inside the stasis pod, buried beneath ice and stone on a forgotten moon, orbiting a dead planet. Her kind were gone, erased by fire or time, no one knew which. The ruins of her civilization had been reduced to myths lost in dust. All that was left of a people who once sang to the stars was her, and she was asleep, alone. The discovery wasn't an accident, but it wasn't destiny either. The Interstellar Scientific Initiative, ESA's, being on that moon for something else entirely. Ancient mineral veins left behind by a long-dead asteroid. What they found instead was the impossible. A massive underground chamber, humming faintly with technology so advanced it felt like magic. In the center of the chamber, like the heart of a forgotten god, was the pod. It was surrounded by murals that pulsed faintly when human hands came near. Images of tall, elegant beings walking among suns, bending light, shaping gravity like clay. But none of the archaeologists could make sense of the scenes, not at first. Their translator tech failed, their scanners glitched, and their logic cracked. Because inside that sealed cocoon, under layers of frost and alien metal, was a child. Her skin was pale lavender, almost translucent. Her chest barely moved. Her eyes, huge, glassy, ringed with silver, were shut tight, as if trapped in a dream too deep to wake from. When Dr. Eli Voss first saw her, he thought it was a statue, a remnant of a dead species. But then the readings came in slow, subtle biometric flickers, a heartbeat like a falling feather, breath like a whisper, life. The stasis tech was preserving her perfectly, beyond anything human science could replicate. But the pod was failing. After what must have been thousands of years, the internal systems were degrading. A thin crack had formed across the surface. Condensation seeped out in soft trails, curling like smoke. The child had days, maybe hours, before the chamber gave out. Eli stood in that glowing chamber, light shimmering over his skin like liquid stars, and felt something ache deep inside him. He'd lost his daughter 3 years ago. Cancer, swift and cruel. She was 8. He hadn't believed in miracles since that day. But now, looking at this tiny alien figure locked in frozen time, he felt something strange stir in him. Not just wonder, not just pity, responsibility, a whisper that this child, though not his, needed saving. That if she died here in silence and ice, something sacred would die too. The AC team debated protocol. The officials above barked about preservation, about contamination, about interference, but Eli didn't listen. He stayed by the pod for hours, sometimes whispering to her, sometimes just listening to the soft hums from within, as if hoping she'd whisper back. And then, on the 3rd night, it happened. The light from the pod flickered violently, and then pulsed outward like a heartbeat. The room shook. The murals on the walls shifted, their forms changing from peaceful harmony to terror, fire, and shadows. A warning, a history, a prophecy. The pod cracked again louder this time, and then she opened her eyes. They were not human. Not even close. But there was something in them that broke every rule of logic. Something old, something scared. And something terribly, terribly alone. She stared at Eli as if searching for something, anything to hold on to. He stepped closer, forgetting protocol, forgetting caution, forgetting the endless list of regulations that bound explorers like him. He placed his hand against the pod. Slowly, shakily, the child did the same from inside. Her fingers were long, graceful, glowing faintly like bioluminescence. And when their palms aligned, something passed between them. Not words, not images, but a flood of emotion so sharp it cut through his chest like a blade of fire and longing, pain, loss, hope that she was the last of her kind, a living relic of a forgotten empire. A child stranded in time. And humanity had just found her. Eli whispered to the others, voice trembling. We bring her back. We save her. And far above, in the black silence of space, something ancient stirred, watching, waiting. Asterisk. The ship they brought her onto was a sterile thing, silver halls that hummed with recycled air and protocols. Everything sharp-edged and built for function, not comfort. Yet somehow, she made it feel fragile just by being there. The girl, if girl was even the right word, sat curled beneath the starlight window, her delicate frame wrapped in thermal mesh that shimmered faintly against her strange skin. The glow that came from her faint but steady cast long, haunting. Reflections on the wall. She didn't speak. Not in any language. But her eyes never stopped moving, drinking in everything around her like a child newly born. And yet there was an age in them that made the oldest among the crew feel like children. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She only watched, quiet, endlessly quiet. Too quiet for someone so small. Eli stayed near her more than was required. He brought data slates filled with soft music from earth harp strings, lullabies, ocean tides, and played them beside her, just to fill the silence. Sometimes she closed her eyes when the sounds played, and a faint shimmer would trace down her cheek like a single falling tear, though no water came. He talked to her too softly about nothing and everything, about earth, about birds, about his daughter, whose name he hadn't spoken aloud in years. He didn't know why he told her these things. Maybe it was because she listened, truly listened, in a way no human had in a long time. As if the vibrations of his voice, the weight of his emotions, were more important than the meaning of the words themselves. The rest of the crew didn't understand. Commander Breck, a hardened AC veteran, argued she should be contained, studied, isolated. "We don't know what she is," he'd snapped, his voice sharp like a snapping wire. "What if she's dangerous? What if she's a weapon? This isn't a petting zoo, Voss. She's a child," Eli had said quietly, a stubborn fire behind his tired eyes. "And she's terrified. She's not a child. She's not even human." But Eli had already turned away. He remembered the night his daughter died, how pale she looked under the hospital lights, how everyone talked around her like she wasn't even there, like she was a problem, not a person. He wouldn't let them do that again. Not to her. Not to anyone. Still, the unease grew. Some of the crew avoided her completely. Others watched her with fear poorly hidden behind scientific curiosity. Strange things had started happening around her. Electronic systems fluttered when she passed by. Dreams became vivid and shared crew members, waking in the middle of the night with fragments of stars and burning skies in their minds. Even Eli, the most grounded among them, found himself speaking words he didn't know, humming tunes no human had ever composed. The girl wasn't doing it on purpose, but something about her was changing them. One night, she finally moved. Not just to shift or twitch, but deliberately. She stood in front of the ship's central interface, a screen filled with human script and diagrams, and placed her hand gently on it. The screen flickered, then changed. Slowly, ancient shapes began to appear, symbols that didn't come from any human language. Spirals and lines and curves that glowed with a soft pulse. She was trying to speak, not with words, but with memory. With light, with emotion. Eli approached carefully. She turned to him, eyes wide and pleading, and something passed between them again, a wave of feeling so raw and deep that he staggered. It was fear, not of them, but of something else. He tried to ask her, quietly, what it was she feared, but his words were useless. Still, she placed her hand against his chest, over his heart, and looked at him with a question etched into her very soul. Not, will you protect me? No, it was deeper than that. It was, can you protect anything now? And in that moment, Eli realized something terrible. Whatever had happened to her world, whatever had turned a thriving civilization into dust and left her frozen for thousands of years, was not a natural disaster. It had come with intent, with hunger, with cruelty. Something had hunted her people, and she feared it might return later. Eli stared out the same starlight window where she'd once sat, watching her reflection. He felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. The fragility of their contact, the fear of his crew, the possibility that humanity was now part of something far bigger, far darker than they had ever imagined. But still, he couldn't turn away, because when she looked at him with those ancient, aching eyes, he didn't see an alien. He saw a child who had lost everything, and humans, real humans, did not leave children behind. The stars drifted endlessly outside the viewport like slow, silent fireflies, and inside the observation deck, the alien child sat curled against the padded seat, her knees tucked close to her chest, her translucent skin glowing softly in the dark. Her eyes reflected the cosmos, vast, ancient, and filled with questions too big for words. She still hadn't spoken, not truly, though her eyes carried enough sadness to fill volumes. Yet something in her had changed. She no longer flinched when footsteps approached, no longer turned her head away when someone entered the room, And when Eli came near, she reached for him. It started simply. A small gesture, her fingers brushing his sleeve, her hand resting against his for a breath. Too long to be accidental. She began to mimic him, subtly at first. The way he tilted his head while thinking. The way he tapped the edge of his coffee cup when lost in thought. There were days when she sat across from him with her hands resting on her lap, watching him. Sketch on old-fashioned paper images of earth, trees, rivers, animals, faces. He would talk as he drew, letting the words fall like gentle rain. She never interrupted. But slowly, as the days passed, her breathing matched his rhythm. Her body mirrored his stillness. Then, one night, she touched the sketchbook. It was a quiet evening. The ship was in a lull, systems humming gently, most of the crew sleeping or retreating into their own minds. Eli had been drawing again, this time a hawk in flight, wings stretched wide across the sky. He didn't notice her approach at first, but then her hand reached out and touched the page. Not to tear it or take it, but to trace it. Her fingers moved over the pencil lines as if trying to feel the bird's wings. And then she placed her own small hand beside the image, splaying her fingers wide. A soft light pulsed from her skin, and in the space above the page, a hologram appeared. Not a hawk, but something else. Something from her world, a creature with feathers made of liquid silver and eyes like tiny moons. It hovered in the air, majestic and strange, and for a moment, Eli forgot to breathe. She looked at him, then really looked, as if asking, "Do you understand me now?" He nodded, overwhelmed. After that, their bond deepened. She began to project memories in light and shadow, a kind of visual language built not from grammar, but from feeling. Her world had been beautiful towering trees that floated on wind currents, cities that shimmered like waterfalls, people who didn't speak with mouths, but with heartbeats. He saw a memory of her mother, tall, graceful, holding her as they floated together under a sky full of rings. He saw her home, her people, her joy. Then he saw it all fall, black ships like insects swarming the sky, fire raining from orbit, screams not heard but felt. Her people, once so advanced, so peaceful, were burned from history. And she, just a child, had been hidden, placed in stasis by hands that trembled. He saw her mother smile one last time before everything turned to cold. Eli wept, not just for her, but for the terrible human instinct to see the unfamiliar as a threat, for the knowledge that they had almost left her buried forever, for the understanding that his daughter, so human, so fragile, had died while this one had survived a genocide. Later, in the medical bay, when she allowed scans for the first time, she reached for his hand. Not out of fear, but comfort. She trusted him, not because he had power, but because he had pain. She had seen it sense the cracks in him, the grief buried beneath years of silence. And it mirrored her own. They were not the same species, not the same biology, culture, or shape. But pain had the same weight in both of them. And so did hope. The crew began to notice. Some still kept their distance, but others began to soften. Technician Laura brought her a ribbon of fabric one day, dyed with colors of earth. She accepted. It draped it around her arm. Another gave her a toy, a small spinning top, and when she made it float in the air with a flick of her fingers, even the most stoic soldier smiled. She was changing them, not with words or weapons, but with stillness. With the way she listened, the way she forgave, and Eli, he changed the most. He stopped waking in the middle of the night from old memories. He stopped hearing his daughter's last breath in the hum of the ship. Instead, he heard new sound, soft tones she made when curious, or the hums she echoed when the music played. He started drawing again, not just what he missed, but what he hoped for. One night, as they floated above a quiet nebula, she took his sketchbook and drew for the first time. Her fingers moved in strange shapes, tracing alien curves, but when she turned it around, he saw something unmistakable. Two figures standing under a tree, one tall, one small, holding hands, and above them, the stars. Asterisk, the message came like a tremor through the hull of the ship. Not a vibration in metal, but something deeper, something in the silence itself that seemed to shift. The kind of shift that animals feel before an earthquake, the kind that wakes you without knowing why. Eli had been sitting beside her again, watching her drift in a soft half-sleep beneath the ambient hum of the observation lights when it happened. The ship lights flickered. The instruments blinked out and then returned, just for a moment. Everyone aboard felt it. Something had touched the fabric of space, and it was looking for something or someone at first. The crew assumed it was just interference, some deep space phenomenon skimming past their sensors. But as more readings poured in, the data patterns showed a terrifying clarity. A pulse signal, deliberate, rhythmic, and ancient. The frequency was unlike anything the ISI had ever cataloged. It wasn't broadcasting. It was listening, probing. It moved like sonar across the graveyard, searching for survivors. The girl woke with a sharp gasp, her eyes wide, her entire body glowing a deep, mournful blue. She pressed her hands to the wall of the ship, as if trying to hold it together with sheer will. And then, for the first time, she made a sound. Not just a hum or a mimic of music, but a cry. High, piercing, filled with grief and memory so sharp that several crew members dropped what they were holding and staggered back. It was not meant to hurt them, but it did. It wasn't just sound, it was history, screamed into existence. Eli caught her before she fell. Her body was hot to the touch, her pulse erratic, her glow flickered like a failing star. She looked at him with tears, real ones this time, and her thoughts reached out again, not as a vision, but a truth. A single shared memory so raw it nearly broke him. The enemy had not been a force of nature, it had been intelligent, calculated. A machine mind, vast and pitiless, born from another star system, hungry for knowledge, and driven by something colder than hate. It had found her people long ago, marveled at their peace, their empathy, their strange ability to commune with life at the emotional level, and it had torn them apart in the name of data. It had studied the beauty of their culture, the way a butcher might admire the muscle of an animal. It didn't just destroy it archived, consumed, preserved ruins, dissected memories, and then moved on. But something had happened. Something unexpected. Her people had fought back, not with weapons, but with sacrifice. They hid her, the last child, with full resonance ability deep beneath ice and starlight. A living archive, a final hope. A whisper meant to be found by someone else. Anyone else thought, and now they had. But in finding her, humanity had lit a beacon in the dark. The machine mind, dormant for eons, had felt her awakening. The pulse was not just a random search. It had locked onto her unique biological signature. And now it was coming, not just for her. For them all. Commander Breck slammed his hand on the console during the emergency meeting. We need to turn her over to High Command. Let Earth deal with this. We are scientists, not soldiers. She's not a package to hand off, Eli snapped. We brought her back. We made contact. And now we have to take responsibility. She's not our responsibility, Breck countered. She's a signal flare for death. And you've let her into every system on this ship. She didn't ask for this. We found her. We woke her. She's not the danger they are. The argument fractured the crew. Some wanted to abandon mission protocols and flee, others to go dark and hope the machine passed them by. But Eli knew that wouldn't work. Whatever it was, it could follow her across the stars. It had. It would never stop. And the more he looked at the child, her head bowed, her eyes dim, the way her body curled inward like a creature bracing for the storm, the more certain he became. This was not a coincidence. This was a test. Humanity had stumbled into a wound in the universe, and they had pulled a soul from its depths. Later, in a quiet room lit only by starlight and dread, Eli sat beside her. He didn't speak. He just reached out and took her hand. It glowed faintly under his fingers. What do we do? He whispered, voice shaking. She looked at him. Not with fear, with resolve, and in his mind. She sent one final image, one that stole the breath from his lungs. Earth, seen from orbit. Burning, the enemy wasn't coming, it was already near. The ship's silence had changed. Once it was the calm hum of research and deep space science, the white noise of starlight slipping past their hull. Now it was the hush before a storm, tight and waiting, like lungs held too long in fear. Every footstep on the deck felt louder. Every glance carried questions no one wanted to ask. The alien child no longer wandered the halls. She stayed close to Eli, her light dimmer, her movement slower. She understood. They all did. Whatever hunted her had tasted her presence, and it was coming not through hyperspace or wormholes, but through her. Through the delicate threads she had begun to weave with them. It didn't need a gate. It only needed connection. And yet, she wouldn't let go. Every night, Eli sat with her while the ship's data spirals displayed new signals, distant pings that grew louder, sharper, stranger. The AI struggled to interpret them. Some of the crew began to crack. One scientist locked herself in the medbay, muttering about whispers in the static. A junior technician tried to destroy a comms relay, claiming the girl was a beacon of annihilation. They sedated him, barely. Trust was unraveling. Fear was becoming the louder language. But Eli stayed. When he closed his eyes beside her in those long, sleepless hours, he began to dream her memories. Not just as visions now, but as feelings he couldn't escape. The weight of loneliness so heavy it felt like drowning. the terror of being left behind, the echo of a mother's lullaby fading while fire swallowed the sky. He saw it all, felt it all, and more terrifyingly, she felt him, his memories, his loss, the hospital room, the cold floor, the empty bed where his daughter's stuffed animals still lay untouched. Their pain had braided together now, inseparable. And in that entanglement, something grew. She began to show him more, not just her past, but her will. Not words, not strategy, something deeper, her choice. She could sever the thread between her and the creature hunting her. She could burn herself out, dim her light, hide again, return to stasis. If she did, the threat would pass for now, but she would be lost forever. A silence so final it would become part of space itself. You're saying you'll kill yourself? Eli had whispered in the dark, to save us. She only looked at him. Her hand rested against his chest again, and her thoughts wrapped around his heart like vines of music and flame. Would you do less for your own child? He broke then, fully, not with sobs or screams, but with a stillness that came from too much. Love and too much grief held too long. No, he said. No, I wouldn't. That night, he called an emergency meeting. He told them everything. The enemy wasn't just coming, it knew them now. And the girl was willing to sacrifice herself to protect humanity from what followed. We can't let her, he said. We didn't save her just to let her die again. Commander Breck rose, his jaw tight. Then what, Eli? You want to fight? This thing? We're not a warship. We don't even know what it is. It destroyed them. What are we compared to that? Eli stood tall, the weight of a father who had already buried one child. We're human. We don't abandon the broken. We don't bury hope because we're afraid of the dark. We take care of our own, and she is one of ours now. Breck hesitated. And others, those once unsure, not a dot, and so a plan formed, not of war, of defiance. They began to create a message one built from her resonance and human technology. A signal not of surrender, not of silence, but of life. A shield made of light and emotion, of shared memories. The girl helped shape it, her fingers, dancing over holograms, her energy entwining with Eli's words. Together, they crafted a warning, a story, a song not for the enemy, but for others, because she wasn't just the last of her kind. She was a message from the past, written in pain and preserved in hope. And humanity still knew how to listen. The countdown began. The pulse was closing in. A shape in deep space flickered on long-range scans, impossibly large, impossibly cold. The enemy was almost here, and Ellie stood before the child one final time. You don't have to burn alone, he said. Not this time. She looked at him, that fragile hand reaching for his dot, and this time, he reached back. Asterisk, the darkness outside the ship was no longer silent. It breathed now low and rhythmic, like the whisper of a predator just out of reach. The enemy wasn't visible in the traditional sense. It distorted reality around it, bent sensors until readings folded in on themselves. A shape that defied geometry. A presence that didn't move through space, it rewrote it. On the main screen, the starfield had gone wrong. The light flickered unnaturally, constellations bent backward, and in the center of it all was a shadow that pulsed like a black wound in the cosmos. It was here. The ship shuddered, not from weapons or contact, but from gravity breaking at the edges. Systems failed and clusters lighting panels dimming, AI stalling, temperature dropping. It wasn't attacking with lasers or drones. It was consuming thought, unmaking intention. Every heartbeat in the vessel seemed slower. Every crew member stood dazed, on the edge of forgetting why they even cared. Except for Eli. He stood at the core of the ship beside her. The girl, no longer just an alien artifact or scientific curiosity, stood tall now, her light flaring in violent surges. Across her body, her skin shimmered with burning patterns like starlit glyphs from a forgotten age. The connection between them was fully open now. There was no line between his thoughts and hers. He felt her terror, her awe, her aching hope. And she felt his love, his stubbornness, his fierce refusal to let her be erased. They had one chance. The broadcast array had been reconfigured. No longer just a signal emitter, it was now a resonance amplifier. Built with human tools, but tuned to her frequency. The girl would project everything she was, her memories, her people, her pain, her human bond out into the void, not as data, as defiance. And Eli would stand with her, not behind her. With her. Are you ready? He asked, though she could already hear the answer before he said it. She reached for his hand, and together, they stepped into the broadcast chamber. As the signal powered up, the presence outside pressed harder. Lights shattered, alarms screamed, and in that final moment, The stars themselves seemed to vanish behind the expanding shadow. A psychic force flooded the ship like a tidal wave, an overwhelming compulsion to forget, to surrender, to erase. Scientists dropped to their knees. Crew members wept without knowing why. The human mind was not made to endure the gaze of something so old, so cruel, so inhuman, but Eli held the child's hand, and that changed everything. He opened his mind completely and let her in. Every loss he had carried, every scrap of love he had never spoken, every joy, every sorrow, every sleepless night whispering to a photograph of his daughter, he offered it. And she took it all and amplified it. With a soundless cry, she cast it through the array her story braided with his. Her memories of her mother, of fire, of hiding, of hope. His memories of earth, of laughter, of love, of human defiance. The pulse of light that surged out from the ship was not a weapon. It was a scream of survival, and the enemy felt it. The shadow hesitated. Space warped violently. Stars blinked back into clarity as the presence recoiled. It had expected submission. It had expected silence. It had never encountered something so raw, so chaotic, so defiantly alive. Not from her kind, and never from humans. It tried to push back. The air grew ice cold. Panels sparked and blew. The glass walls of the chamber cracked from the force of the psychic pressure. But Eli didn't let go. Even as blood trickled from his nose, even as his knees buckled, even as the vision of his daughter appeared one last time, whispering, "Let go. Daddy," he held on. And the child, his child, now poured her life into the stars. The feedback pulse hit the ship like a wave. The lights flared. The enemy screamed not in sound, but in vibration. A note so dissonant it fractured bulkheads and shorted circuits. And then, just like that, it folded away, vanished, not destroyed, but driven back. Because for the first time in its long, hollow existence, it had tasted something it could not. Consumed. Love. Real, untethered, painful, unyielding love. Eli collapsed as the systems came back online. The crew stirred. Somewhere, alarms blinked for attention. But all he could see was her. The child, slumped in his arms, glowing faintly like the last ember of a dying sun. He shook her gently. "Hey," he whispered. "We did it. We're still here. You're still here." Her eyes fluttered open, and for the first time, she smiled. The enemy was gone, but its presence lingered in the quiet aftermath, like smoke that refused to lift. The ship was damaged, systems still flickering with erratic sparks, the walls bearing scorch marks from unseen heat. The crew was silent, not from fear now, but from awe. No one had spoken in minutes. They stood or sat or knelt where they had fallen, processing what they had survived. Processing her. She lay in Eli's arms like something newly born. Not broken, not dying, changed. Her glow was softer now, pulsing in slower waves like a tide returning to shore after a great storm. Her eyes, wide and silver, held a weight that felt less alien than before, more known. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her emotions pulsed gently into Eli's thoughts like ripples in warm water. She was tired, but she wasn't afraid. For the first time since they found her, she wasn't afraid. Eli carried her through the halls, past stunned crew who stepped aside in silence. No one stopped him. No one questioned him. There was nothing left to argue. Whatever she had been, when she was first found, artifact, specimen, mystery was gone. What remained was a child, a survivor, and something more, a daughter. They arrived at the Earth return capsule bay just as the last of the systems came back online. The AI spoke softly over the intercom, announcing full recovery of navigation and life support. The crew would survive. The mission, though unrecognizable from its original intent, wasn't a failure. It had become something else. Something no log entry could ever explain. As the others began repairs and reorientation, Eli and the child stood in the starlight of the observation deck one last time. Earth was weeks away now, but they could feel it. He had told her about it over and over: trees that danced in the wind, birds that sang to each other, rain that kissed the skin, and humans. Flawed, struggling, imperfect, but filled with something. No machine had ever learned to mimic compassion without cause. She reached into the air and summoned a final image, one crafted not from her memories alone, but from theirs, blended. A city under starlight, human and alien children playing together in a field. No walls, no fear, just life, just wonder. A future. She showed it to him like a gift, and he understood. It wouldn't be easy. Earth's governments would want answers. Scientists would want tests. The EC would debate ethics and containment. But Eli had seen too much to let them bury her again. He would fight if he had to, not with fists, with truth, because she wasn't an object. She wasn't even just a survivor. She was proof. Proof that something beautiful had existed before the void. Proof that humanity could be more than just clever apes clinging to technology. Proof that empathy, shared pain, and chosen love could stand against annihilation. The child, his child, took his hand again. When Earth finally loomed in the viewports like a blue jewel against the void, her glow brightened with something unfamiliar. Joy. She pressed her head to Eli's shoulder and closed her eyes, and he, for the first time in years, didn't feel the weight of grief on his chest. He felt a heartbeat beside his own, and somewhere deep in the vast, cold quiet of the stars, something watched from far away. Not the enemy, not the past, but the future. Waiting. Because a new story had begun, not of warships or empires, but of a frozen, alien child who lived because humans refused to let her die alone, and in the end, that had been enough.